Hey everybody, Jay Weidner, Reality Check. Thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe and all that other stuff that you have to do to keep me going. I've been at 24,800 for like 4 months now. And I know that when you hit 25, you go in some new category in YouTube. And so I'm not saying there's anything going on. I'm just saying that's kind of strange.
There is.
Yeah. So anyway, today we got a really fascinating show, kind of continuing my examination of Hermeticism, I guess you could say. And I think it's a really important subject that does not get enough discussion out there. And I really want to kind of unveil what it really is all about. And I'm not going to do it here today. I'm not going to do it in 4 weeks. It's going to take years, actually. It's such a deep subject that you literally could dive into it for 80 years, 90 years, and still only scratch the surface. It's really also why I like to think about us living in a simulation. But when I think about the complexity of Hermeticism, I realize there's no programmer could have ever programmed that in. So I no longer believe in a simulation. It's fun to think about, but once you get into something like Hermeticism and realize that the programmers of the simulation would have to it should be impossible. It wouldn't even be worth the effort. They would just drop the subject and not let it even occur. So anyway, today I'm with a Hermeticist, and his name is Hank Kraychir. And Hank, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Jay. It's good to see you again. I know it's been a few years.
Yep.
Looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about Hermeticism, and in particular a guy named Paracelsus and all that. But first, I want you to introduce yourself, because most people don't know who you are, and this is really a chance for you to connect with a larger group of people.
Yeah, I do appreciate the opportunity to talk. I will tell you that, let me start by saying that, of course, I'm a Freemason. I am Blue Lodge, York Rite, and Scottish Rite, and various concordant bodies, and they all have their own lessons in terms of your own spiritual growth. But let me also say that I am not, this will keep me safe with the brethren, I am not the authority on Freemasonry. I will express my views. We are a very tolerant organization. They tolerate me and I tolerate them. And along the lines of some of the great authors, of course, the new medium today is videos like we're doing here. But in the past, it was literature. It was written books. Manly P. Hall, a prolific writer, 33-degree Freemason. He exposed a lot of information, Hermeticism in particular, but so did Albert Pike. So did a lot of Theosophists, co-Masons, and so forth. I'm staying along that tradition. Eliphas Levi, French esoteric Freemason, man most responsible for morals and dogma. He was very clear. And this is about 162 years ago. In about 1860, he wrote a book called The History of Magic.
Yep.
And of course, we live in the West, so we have a Christian overtone to our culture. Everything from government to political discourse, everything is related to the ideas of the basis of Christianity. So when they hear magic, they think of something, they've been taught by church doctrine that it's something evil. Well, it's not. And we're going to get into that a little bit more. But I want to tell you a story, if I can. And I think it's going to set the basis, not only for my own journey, but also why I feel compelled to tell everyone this now. Eliphas Levi was very clear in 1860. He said, we need to come out with this information in his book, The History of Magic. And so about, almost 2 years, November 1st of this year, I will be 2 years old. And people go, well, 2 years, you're far older than 2 years old. I'm well in my 60s. And what happened to me was a life-changing event. I've always studied the mysteries for well over a decade, maybe 15 years now. And but it was an altering event. I basically, my left ventricle had collapsed. I'm a healthy guy, but it changed my life. Let me tell you about the experience. Basically, My left ventricle collapsed. I went into the hospital. My left leg was swollen. And they did a series of, tests, everything. They found out I had no plaque at all in me. I'm a healthy guy. I ran, like, before I went in, I think a month before, I ran a mile. I'm O negative, and I'm a large man. I'm quite muscular. I'm an ex-athlete, so 250 pounds is not, I was in high school, I was 230. So I'm just a little bit overweight compared to my high school, which is remarkable by most men's standard. So I lift weights. I was healthy, good diet. It was all part of my temple, my body.
You're making me nervous.
We should be afraid, because there's always a lesson from the spirit world, and there was a lesson in it for me. But so, make a long story short, I said, "Hey, you had a virus. We don't know what it was, right? We have no clue, but we know if you study the mysteries, the favorite tool of the spirit world is to use viruses to attack people or to send a message. I'll be clear, I really don't know what it was. But they said I'm a perfect candidate for a heart transplant. Well, obviously, it was successful. I went in. We're all familiar with the God created the universe in 6 days, right? Well, there's a parallel there. In 6 days, now this is unheard of. O negative, that's a universal giver. You can't, they said you're going to be 6 to 12 months. I was preparing. I was, telling my children, especially my boys, hey, you're going to need to do this, take care of your mother.
Yeah.
And my heart was down to, believe it or not, they didn't even know why I was conscious. 2%. I had a pump put down my chest here to keep me alive. I was on a little cart. And literally it was 2%. And they were pumping it with 8%. They didn't want to overload my system. And they go, why are you still awake? I don't know. But on the 7th day, I rested. I was put in a coma. I got on the transplant list in 6 days. I got a heart, and it happened. Now, if you're bad, it would happen on Halloween weekend. But if you're good, it's called All Saints Day.
Right.
So, same weekend.
Yep.
God, with the help of my brethren and numerous, hundreds of people from God-believing church people, they literally came to my aid and prayed for me. And God answered my prayer. And I basically got a transplant. 7th day I rested. I remember literally sitting or laying in the bed, looking out the window. And by the way, I gotta give credit where credit due. Loma Linda University here in California, Christian hospital, great. The staff pray before their shift. They'll pray with you if you're in pain. My Masonic brother, who's a Catholic priest, he's 33-degree Freemason. They opened the doors for him. They let him come in. This is during COVID, and people aren't allowed to go in. He was allowed to go in and pray with him. So I want to give credit where credit is due. But in short order, I was laying in the bed, and I have this ability to see orbs with the light is just right.
Yep.
And a lot of people have that. And so I was visited right afterward. Usually you see 20, 30 of them at a time. You see them in the sky, sometimes in rooms, but you definitely see them at the right light. Jay, I'm going to tell you, I want to say hundreds of thousands, not millions. Literally, the spirit world. We're going to get into Paracelsus. And what he said, there's an infinite amount of dimensions and an infinite amount of spirit types. But I was visited by hundreds of thousands of orbs, even in the room. I was like, wow, hey, how you doing, guys? It was pretty cool. Of course, I'm happy to be alive, obviously. And they answered my prayer. And then I remember asking the doctors, I said, hey, doc, I said, what's the life expectancy of a heart transplant? Oh, by the way, this is important. Let me back up just a little bit. I was in and out the first day in, and I walked out of the hospital in 33 days. So if you know anything about Kundalini, spirit fire, the spinal cord, that's a powerful number in Scottish Rite Freemason. All right. And we can talk about that later, but 33. So think 7 and 33. So I asked the doctors, I said, hey, what's the life expectancy? I didn't worry about it before, but afterwards I wanted to know. And they said, well, it's 7 years. I said, oh, never heard that number before. That's pretty cool. I like that number. But I said, I really want to know what's the what's the record for the longest recipient of a heart? And they said 33. And I went, I'm game. I'm all in. Let's go for it. Let me just say that I am on, there's no doubt in my mind, I think God has always been guiding me, but I'm on a spiritual journey. It's my own, these are my own thoughts, but I will use Masonic literature. What's often said, of course, I honor, of course, I'm in the California jurisdiction. So I honor what we call the rite of passage, which is the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry. Very clear, we cannot reveal signs and tokens, right? That's the only secrets in Freemasonry. And of course, I know you interviewed Timothy Hogan, and he mentioned that when he goes to these tribes and different things, signs and tokens, it's important. We don't reveal that. That's the only secret. The other thing is we don't reveal lodge business, or, you know, hey, brother just got his degree. We don't talk about that stuff. That's a kind of a big no-no. Other than that, everything I'm going to talk about today is on my spiritual journey, my perspective on using Masonic literature to try to let people understand what Hermeticism is. Eliphas Levi was very, very clear. He basically said that it's time to release it. That was 162 years ago when he wrote that book in 1860, The History of Magic. And he was there. So I'm going to use his, his idea that it is time that the general population truly understands what Hermeticism is. I know you've been studying around the corners, but I'm going to go right into it. And I do want to say, too, that a lot of people, I don't need to become a Freemason. I can just read Masonic literature and I can get all the information. Well, it's readily available. But without the initiatory process of becoming a Freemason, the first 3 degrees, go York Rite. This is what Albert Pike did. York Rite, Scottish Rite, and concordant bodies. You get all these lessons that will help your Hermetic understanding. Hermeticism is Freemasonry today. People go, what do you mean? Well, just pop the book open once in a while, brothers, and you will see that Freemasonry is the legitimate carrier of the secrets. Albert Pike said it, Manly P. Hall said it, others have said it in their literature. Again, it's been 100 years. A lot of contemporary literature today soft shoes. It goes around the corner. You go back 100 years, go back 150, 160 years ago, 200 years ago, Masons were talking about something totally different than they are today. So I'm going to tell you about Hermeticism. And there's this great guy. And now he is we're going to get a lot of people, even today, even in Masonic circles. Tell me about Hermeticism, but don't bring up Christianity. And I'm like, well, you really don't want to know about Hermeticism. You've already shut it down. Christianity was and is the carrier of the secrets as well. Knight Templar, various carriers of the secrets, okay? But, and I've heard you mention this before, I'm going to ad-lib it a little bit, but I like to refer to it as the bastardization of organizations. Successive generations of inbreeding leads to bastardization. I mean, it's really bad.
Definitely.
It really hurts the gene pool of any organization, by the way,
Yep.
including Freemasonry. I'm not bashing the order. I support Freemasonry.
Yep.
I also support religion in general. But you have had a bastardization of going on from the original intent. It's in the literature, but like I said, successive generations have lost touch with that. So we've got a figure, it's called Paracelsus. He is Swiss. And who is this guy? He was a Rosicrucian, and he is a prophet. Let me just say that. He is a prophet within the esoteric community. And this guy is, how do I say this? Sort of like George Washington is considered the president of the United States. All right. I think we all acknowledge that.
Kind of a sarcastic George Washington, you might say.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. But again, he was, in terms of esotericism, forget about the secular world. In esotericism, he was sort of a George Washington of the Renaissance, the Great Awakening.
Yep.
He brought that. You know, I watched a video the other day of a guy named James O'Keefe.
Oh, yeah.
Project Veritas, right?
Yeah.
He's exposing, there are people in their own words. And people are like, what's going on?
Great fun.
what he said, though, he said in an interview, he says, and that's why I resonated with it, because he says, we're trying to bring on a great renaissance. And I went, wow, we're on the same frequency. We're going to use Paracelsus thoughts on the Renaissance. And by the way, for almost 200 years, it was called Paracelsianism. And it flourished throughout Europe. Now, everyone remembers, you go to Wikipedia and you pull it up and they'll say, they'll have something like, oh, he's the benefactor. Basically, we're the benefactor of his thoughts in terms of modern medicine. Literally, it just litany, all medicine and his thought process.
Actually, I was really surprised at how well Wikipedia treated Paracelsus.
I was, but they
I thought it was just going to be a lambast.
No, but they eliminated the most important part, at least from the esoteric.
Right.
They eliminated the esoteric altogether.
They do that.
Yeah, exactly.
If you look up Fulcanelli in Wikipedia, it's like he's a cartoon character.
Exactly. Right. And of course, I'm a recipient of Hermetic thought, Rosicrucian thought, modern medicine, which is a split away from, it happened most prolific. It was slow, it was organic, and then it really accelerated in about the 19th century.
Yeah.
It divided medicine from religion, spirituality, mesmerism, all that. They kind of split it away. And they said, well, you can't, when you do a test, right? You do these, you have to duplicate it in order for it to be a fact. Well, Helena Blavatsky was very clear. The spirit world is really finicky, and often it's based on your own morality. And so they won't respond to you. Others, like a dog, they'll do tricks for you, but when you get in front of a crowd, they won't do anything. It's the same way. It's spiritualism in that way.
Yeah.
So Paracelsus, he had a thought, and he traveled, much like Pythagoras. He did the same thing. He traveled throughout the known world.
Yep.
And he studied the elements. Of course, in Freemasonry, we have the 5-point star. Of course, we're familiar with the 4 elements, which is fire, earth, water, air. And the 5th, of course, of the 5-pointed star within the craft, within Freemasonry, is the 5th one is the ether.
Right.
You could, in Christianity, we'll call it heaven. In others, they might call that the Akashic record, things like that. Same thing, different names. People get caught up in that. I try to look for as a professor, that was what I was known for. I was a college professor, and I was known for taking very complex ideas for my students and simplifying it so they could understand. They go, oh, wow, I never looked at it that way. So, and I do that on my Rumble account as well. I lay it all out for people. And so let's get into what he was teaching. Okay, so we have the 4 elements, and that's all they'll go. There's all the 4 elements, and most of Masonic literature does the same thing. But
Before we do this, I want to make sure everybody knows who we're talking about. So Paracelsus was a guy who was Swiss, and he studied medicine. His dad was a doctor, and his mom was kind of a esoteric person, and she taught him spirituality. He taught him medicine and science, and he literally went out into the world and called the people practicing medicine at the time, this is 300 years ago, idiots, basically. He would get up in front of a whole group of doctors and go, I've never seen so many idiots in one room. And he probably was murdered, most likely, because he caused so many disconcerting things to happen, because he was literally a guy who healed people. I mean, Absolutely. He really did. He was an incredible healer, an incredible guy, and somebody should make a movie about that guy. But anyway, just want to make sure everybody knows who we're talking about.
I'll tell you right now, like Pythagoras, Masonic literature is inundated with Paracelsus. I mean, it literally inundated. I mean, pull up any Masonic book and just plug it in. Either plug up elementals, elementaries, or disembodied spirits, and you're talking about Paracelsus. Now, he, I don't want to say rediscovered, he put it into Western thought, what the ancients were talking about. We're going back to the beginning of time. A lot of people don't understand. All they got to do is read the 1723 Constitution of Freemasonry from England, and it says, when did Freemasonry begin? Now, get past the name. All right, the name is Freemasonry is more of a contemporary view. The ideas of Freemasonry has always existed. They said it began with the beginning of time, Adam and Eve, which is a metaphor for beginning of time. We're going 20,000 years ago to China. They had the square and compass. They were holding up, and they were teaching the leadership, not only their religious and philosophical leadership, but also the political class and the soldier class, just like they did in Rome and Greece, and most of the Mediterranean during that time, the secret institutions or the secret collegias. And so, so this thought is as old as time itself. It is the secret of Hermeticism. It is the arcanium, the secret of secrets, the holy of holies. That's the way it's referred to. Just do it. You know, people want to dismiss it. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, open up a book, study it for about 15 years, and you'll figure it out too. But I have to admit, I'm being guided, and I've asked for approval, and I received approval to tell this to the population. And then I was granted the knowledge of Eliphas Levi. I went back and read it, and I'm going, oh, can I use this as an example? I'll be happy to read that to you at any time. But Eliphas Levi said it too. So we're talking about elements. All right, we stop at that. We don't go deeper. 33-degree Freemason, Manly P. Hall, laid it out. I have the 1964 edition of his book, Paracelsus. And he wrote it in detail, what the elementals meant, or elements meant. Okay, so you'll read Masonic literature and it would say elements, or elementals, or elementaries. And people don't, or they see Paracelsus, and they never look any further than that. That's it. Or, by the way, let me just say, and I support your earlier view. I watched some of your videos. Our education system sucks. It's done a poor job, but it is by design.
Yeah.
It is to do that.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can have a great awakening, a renaissance. If enough people start to carry these ideas forward, Mason or not, it doesn't matter. It's time to release it. All right, so the elementaries, so they break them down into four, the elementary, these are spirits. And he referred to them as not being coarse as we are. They're the, remember, infinite amount of dimensions, infinite amount of spirit types. He does classify them based on the four elements, okay? And that's a broad definition. It gets a lot more detail, much more than we can define in the 1 hour interview we're going to have here. I do want to say that we're going to Egypt in March. I'm going with Johnny Enoch and Timothy Hogan and some others. Of course, I'll be giving a lecture there, and I'll go into the details of it, and I'll be able to answer and have conversations with people for 2 weeks. So if anyone really wants to know more about Hermeticism, this is the event, because I will break it down in detail for you. But nice. So and now I know ufology, people are trying to find the link to ufology, and I'm going to use Paracelsus' words or his thoughts in terms of how the ancients define this within Hermeticism. And this will answer so much for people. So the fire, like in our let's say our lodge rooms, we used to use candles, now we use lights, same symbol. In the, I just helped my Masonic brother, who's a Catholic priest, do his master's thesis on the Eucharist. So I'm quite familiar with the Eucharist right now. And he mentioned it 6 times, the elements of the Eucharist, which is the Holy Communion. And again, they're the carriers of the secret. The cross is the 4 elements. Yeah. Of what we're talking about, the elementary spirits, okay? And Jesus in the middle, which represents us as a God type, okay? Right. Not God, let me make that clear. I don't want my Christian brethren to get all freaked out on me. Yeah. But we were made in God's image. And so Jesus is what we should strive for in that sense, as a symbol, okay? All right, so let's deal with just one of them. Time is limited. So let's just go with the salamander. All right, people don't know what that means. Mm-hmm. So the salamander, using his description, were lizard-like creatures. Okay, and we would know those today as reptilians, right? Just do a modicum of research, they're reptilians. They're at a different coarseness. And he also referred to these spirits. Why do you call them spirits? Because they, in some ways, they're superior to man, but in other ways, they're not.
Right.
In the ways that they're superior to man, they are not of the same coarseness. So they can do things in terms of, let's say, craft and themselves. They can appear and disappear. They can go through buildings, rocks. They can go through, I mean, literally, they can do things. That's why we call them spirits.
Right.
Right. That's how he defined it in the 16th century. And by the way, he's considered the Swiss Hermes, Hermes Trismegistus. So he's carrying those ideas forward. That's why Rosicrucianism gave him that name. And by the way, Rosicrucians, like Theosophists, Freemasons, Co-Masons, Templars, were cousins.
Right.
We're the same thing, but we are the legitimate, Freemasonry is a legitimate carrier of the secret today. And I'm sharing that with you now. So this coarseness is different. That's why they call them spirits. Let's break it down into Christianity. When you do the Holy Communion, you have a candle, right? I literally asked a 33-degree Freemason, a Catholic priest, I asked him, my Messiah brother, I said, hey, why do you have that there? And he says, oh, it's just bring the Holy Spirit in. And that we refer to that in the esoteric circles as the active force of the universe, or the sidereal force, right? That is it. That is the energy from the Akasha. And
I just want you to clarify the salamander part.
I am.
Okay.
Okay, please. Okay. So the salamander is, remember, infinite amount of dimensions and infinite amount of spirit types, is what he said. So there's not just one type, but the lizard people we might refer to them as salamanders, or reptilian hybrids, or reptilian beings. Okay, and that's why they appear and disappear. Why they're here for a time and they disappear and they show up at another time. They are spirit beings, and they are here. They're part of God's creation. We gotta keep this in mind. They are here. They are the active force of the universe. Okay, I'm Aries the ram. I am considered an active force of the universe, same as the salamander in that sense. I'm the first of the astrological charts. It's a power. I could go into it more, but I'm going to keep it simple.
So you're saying that the salamander represents reptilian spiritual forces?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Or in Christianity, we call that the Holy Ghost. And people go, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, it actually does. If you understand the purpose of the spirit beings of the four classes, what they're here to do is to test your soul.
Right.
All right. And we know that because people who had a UFO experience, they were taken off to a lab somewhere and had something done to them. What do they do when they get back? By the way, it happened to them. I have no doubt in my mind it happened to them.
Yep.
I've had similar experiences, you may have as well. So that's not important. What's important is they exist in a dimensional form.
That's right.
The Paracelsus define them as spirits because they're not at the same coarseness as we are. They are God's creation. They are between God and the angelic and humanity. They're called elementals for a reason.
I like to think of it as that we are living at the bottom of an ocean. And all around us is this invisible ocean filled with all these entities that we can't see, and they see us, and some ignore us, and some are interested, and
it's their playground. This is their playground of the spirit world. Right. This is where when Christians say it's a spiritual battle, it is.
Yeah.
And that's why people have a UFO experience. They turn to a religion. I don't care what, I'm a Catholic mystic. Okay, let's just go with that. I don't care what religion you find. I learned that in Freemasonry, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But what it really is about testing your soul, about cleansing yourself, your body, your spirit, and your soul. Because if you don't, they control you.
That's right.
What's her name? Helena Blavatsky.
Yeah.
She is wonderful in her book, Isis Unveiled.
Great part.
Oh man, it's as big as Pike of Morals and Dogma. It's a great book. But she was a co-Mason theosophist, and her legacy, if I had to narrow it to one thing, is she told you how to communicate and how to navigate the spirit world. Mm-hmm. She did. Yeah. She basically says, and this is the secret. You are never alone. Yeah. By the way, the thoughts you have are not your own.
Yeah.
You go, what? No. I remember taking psychology when I was a freshman in college, in the dark ages. And they said, in psychology, they said the subconscious mind is a sum total of your life experiences.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, not according to Helena Blavatsky.
No.
She said the pathway to the spirit world is your subconscious mind, your private morality.
Yeah, there actually isn't a subconscious, actually.
It is. The subconscious is your pathway. It's like a gateway. We're looking for portals. It's already here.
Yeah.
And so, but it's corrupted. And I get people all the time. They'll say, well, I'm haunted by ghosts. I said, okay. Well, I said, may I suggest that your morality has been corrupted? And they go, I'm a good person. I said, gee, I'm a good person too. And I had to go through a freaking heart transplant to find this out. What it is it's the thoughts you have in your head that are planted. I've heard you say that the government has machines and so forth and so on. By the way, I'm not saying they don't. What I'm saying is they don't need machines. They use it to social media, the media. They do all these different things to control you through the thoughts they put in your head.
That's right. There's not really I think there probably is a machine that can probably put a thought in your head or make you think you're talking to Jesus, but that's not what they're doing. What they're doing is much more subtle than that. They're using changing the language and the landscape, the psychic landscape, to form what they call a mass formation psychosis. That's what appears to be the goal right now.
This is the secret of Hermeticism that they taught in the mystery schools, was how to communicate. And honestly, keep in mind the elementals. We're going to talk about elementaries in a moment, but elementals are benign spirits. What do they mean by a benign spirit? I have an affinity for bloodhounds. They're a great spirit dog. I mean, you could have your grandkids on a pick at them. They'll do all these things. And okay. I mean, they're just, how you treat them is how they'll treat you.
Absolutely.
Remember, now you're never alone. The thoughts are not your own. So you're contacting, the way Paracelsus defined it, is you have contact with these elementals, different classes, different dimensions.
Yep.
And based on may I suggest, your lack of morality, they are controlling you.
That's right.
Now, they want to be here with us, but they only respect morality.
That's right.
If you kick that dog, that dog will turn on you. They want to have interaction. The elementals want you to acknowledge who they are. Okay, so you acknowledge who they are, and they will communicate, and they will do your bidding. That's why we have gnomes, which is the earth spirits. I'm part Irish. So the gnomes are what? The little people who give you gifts and so forth. It's interesting. People will immediately dismiss this. I'm in contact. She sends me stuff like twice a week from the Czech Republic. And she's a restaurant owner, and there's these voices that come in the room, and they're telling her all this stuff. And I told her, I said, you're in contact with the elementals.
Yep.
And they drop gifts from the ceiling.
Absolutely.
And all, it's a coin, it's a jewel, it's whatever. And they said it's an elemental that wants to interact with you.
Yep.
And the customers come in, they get freaked out. They want to see it. And that elemental will stick around as long as you acknowledge it. They're not harmful unless you harm it, like kicking a dog.
Yeah.
Now, the church, in its infinite wisdom, decided to shut all this down.
Yep.
And the reason for that is because of people's lack of morality, particularly their private morality in their head, they decided to shut it down and said, they're all demons. Well, no, they're not. Paracelsus was quite clear. They're not demons.
Well, the thing is that it's really important to understand is that mental illness is a manifestation of interaction with these spirit forms. And I think the church actually was trying to get rid of the mental illness. And that's why they did it. They thought, yeah, and it didn't work. In fact, we're more mentally ill now than ever.
Well, yeah, it's run amok. If we don't stop it within the next generation, we won't exist like Atlantis. It'll be gone.
No,
right? This information needs to get out. So, but let's talk about mental illness just for a second. Let me address that. So in Freemasonry, we're taught to, on our altar, we have the Holy Bible. And people go, well, you're not a Christian organization. Of course not. When you become an initiate, you can have any book of moral instruction on that altar. You put the Bible on the left-hand corner, and that acknowledges the fact that in the West, our whole culture is based on that Bible, okay? Get over the Christian part of it. Teach me about Hermeticism without the Bible. I can't do it. It doesn't exist. Christianity was the carrier of the secret. And so we have that book on there as a book, and we refer to it as the ruling guide of our faith, our morality, our what we teach is morality. Remember what people will do? They'll get our literature and they'll say a bunch of Luciferians or Satanists and whatever. They'll come up with all this stuff. It's because they didn't go through the initiatory process and the advancement through the degrees all the way up to Scottish Rite and beyond. They don't go through that, so they have a limited perspective. All right. And by the way, Lucifer is not a god. It's a location.
Okay, so let's just clear that up because we're going to get a bunch of people screaming and yelling. So I really take to the Rudolf Steiner kind of a thesis that there's a Christ consciousness, there's a Luciferian consciousness, and then there's the really bad Ahriman consciousness, and that Luciferian consciousness is merely the idea that we live in a material world, that there is no spiritual world. And so science and the West has adopted this consciousness over the last 300 years, which Steiner points out that will eventually evolve into Ahrimanic consciousness, where Ahriman is just a spiritual entity that doesn't care about anything. Right. And Ahriman will eventually get rid of the Luciferians. So you must live in the Christ consciousness all the time. And that is not in this world, you live in this world, but not of this world.
I'm not that familiar with his view. I can only speak to my understanding through Masonic literature. That doesn't necessarily, I'm not saying
Lucifer is the morning star. That's all he is.
It's a location.
Exactly.
It's a location, and it is activated by a sidereal force down through to humanity. Okay, right. In that sense, we are in alignment. But I look at it as a location and idea, as opposed to now. Eliphas Levi was very clear. Satan doesn't exist. Satan is not a singular entity. It's a compilation of evil forces. That's the way Freemason Eliphas Levi. That's the way I kind of perceive it. We like to put entities on a throne and say, "Oh, God is guiding us," or Satan is guiding us. No, he, in God's infinite wisdom, he has a legion of spirit forces, and we're going to talk about those. The elementals are the big ones. Okay,
let's get back to these elementals. This is really interesting.
But let me just finish on the one point about the altar in a Masonic lodge. This is important because it will understand where we come from. We have the square and compass. Well, the square is the material world. The compasses is the spirit world. We live in two worlds, and we were taught, particularly in Scottish Rite Freemasonry, we're talked about equilibrium. Right? You live in two worlds. Now, what happens to the person who is crazy? They're living in the spirit world. They can't function in the material world.
That's right.
And on the other end, it's all materialism. You can see it. Everything from sex to social media. Look at me. Look at me. These people are nuts. Okay, this materialism gone amok. Okay, but you need to balance the two. So that's important. Now, the elementals are there. They're benign. You control them. Now,
and when you say the elementals, you're talking about earth, air, fire, water, and ether.
Right, which is still an infinite amount. They break it up into various types. It goes on. It's so extensive. We can't.
And it should be noted, because I find this fascinating, that if we remove the ether just for a second, and we have the four elements, right? Those correspond exactly with the four states of matter in physics, which is solid, liquid, gaseous, right? And they're all there, and they're described in the Hermetic tradition.
Correct. The difference is you and I, Jay, we're the sons of Adam, right? Adam and Eve, right? We're the sons of Adam. That's how they refer to it in the esoteric writings. We're the sons of Adam. They're not. They were created for a different purpose, okay?
Okay.
And they want to interact. Now let's talk about elementaries. And I'd like to turn, of course, Helena Blavatsky talked about it as well, but I really like to turn to Charles Ledbetter. He was a Anglican priest, co-Freemason, and a theosophist. Now he defined the elementaries as emotional spirits, or emotional elementaries. Now they're different from elementals. These are the ones that you create or you attach yourself to. Now, a lot of times when we read a book, right, and we're looking at a word, which is a spell, right? Spell the word, a spelling. That's how we look at, or if I may, elementary school is we're creating what? Our own spirits.
Right.
That's how it's interacted in our language, but we don't understand what it means. So you do that based on your thoughts. And God created the universe and he breathed it into existence. We do the same thing. We have a thought and we activate it through our either talking and so forth and so on. That's how we activate these spirits, and they're called emotional. Some people call them social elementaries, but I like the way Ledbetter did it. And he will refer to them as these emotion. And what are we talking about? We're talking about incubus, succubus, if you're talking about sex, right? That's the most prolific. Sexuality everywhere is a gateway to your thoughts, so the spirits can take control of you, so you're not on the path to the Akasha or heaven or God.
Right. That's why porno is so dangerous.
I'm sorry. Oh, porno is deadly.
Yeah,
it's deadly. Listen, I was laying in bed, and I'm using Helena Blavatsky's ideas here, and Ledbetter's, and so forth. And I'm laying in bed, and a thought comes in my head. Well, I like to use the Pentecostal way of doing something. They'll say, "In the name of Jesus Christ, we're gonna demon leave." Well, you get that thought in your head. That's your private morality. Just cast it out. Just say, "No, I don't want to do that."
Yeah.
Don't even tempt. That was a incubus or succubus, depending on your proclivity. Whatever it is, it's trying to attach itself to you. It's a interdimensional parasite. Is another way of referring to.
Great way to put it.
Absolutely. And boy, I could go into that one. That's another topic for another day. Yep. But these are in essence parasites that you create and you feed them. What is a parasite you have in your intestine? It feeds off the food, the best of the food, and leaves you crap. And that's why you age and get old really fast if active parasites in your body.
Yeah, we did a show early on called The Voices in My Head Don't Like Me. And it's with a psychiatrist who absolutely concluded that these people in insane asylums were being attacked by demons, and that one of them actually started talking to him. He actually got the demon to come out and start talking to him. It was hair raising, and it's true. And they don't like you. The voices in your head don't like you. That's the whole point.
Absolutely. They won't. And so you have these elementaries that you either create or attach to, and they could be displayed as an ism, like wokeism is the popular one today, or communism, or stateism, or socialism, or
mass formation.
May I suggest our economy is based on this. Anyway, there's these different isms. It's skipping me right now, but they come up with all these ideas that are sucking you in.
That's right.
And you attach yourself to them and they control you. So we're trying to understand why certain wokeism groups are going nuts now. Well, I'm sorry, from a Paracelsus idea, we're talking the great enlightenment of the of that period of Europe, which spread and led to where we are now, which may be destroyed within one generation. I've been told. Maybe. You don't turn it around. One generation. The reason is we can see Veritas, the group going in and looking at our schools. They've totally inundated our young people, and if this doesn't get out to the general population, it's Atlantis, it's Egypt, it's Samaria, it's all over again. We're done because these ideas are not lasting principles like morality. And so morality is the gateway. That's how you understand these spirits. Now let's talk about disembodied spirits. Okay, so we have various I even like to say brotherhoods, but various organizations of ideas of brotherhoods in the Akasha. Of course, the most prolific is the one that was defined by the Egyptians, which is Great White Brotherhood. That's when it was first recorded. It obviously goes back further than that, more than likely to Atlantis, the beginning of time. But there are disembodied spirits. So why do we have these disembodied spirits? Now, when Christianity talks about immortality of the soul, that's what they're talking about. If you're worthy, now how do you get worthy? Now remember, you're no longer in the flesh. You are an immortal being in the Akasha, in heaven. Your goal is to guide humanity, and they work through your subconscious mind, through your imagination. That's really the way to say it. And they use morality to adjust and work accordingly. But you also think they still have their consciousness. They're gatekeepers. They experienced what you're experiencing. They're not perfect. Even the saints of the church were not perfect. No way. Now, they might have ended more perfect than they began. And that's the journey that we all go through.
That's the goal.
Absolutely, right? That's why a lot of older people become more spiritual. You go to a church and they're just inundated with old people.
Yeah, my dad went from complete materialist to this, like, I couldn't even believe it. By the time he hit 90, he was like saying things that I never would have thought I would heard my old man saying. And he was talking about interacting with spirits. And
absolutely, they exist.
Yep.
But it's based on your morality, not only in public. I considered myself a good person, but I got angry in my head sometimes.
Oh yeah.
I looked at a beautiful woman. I did something I maybe shouldn't have.
Yeah.
We do that. Don't do that.
That's
the gateway that they come in. Now, by the way,
right.
And I know people, and I think the church warped this a little bit. I understand, church doctrine when it comes to certain sexual activity. All I can tell you is sex is materialism. It doesn't mean you can't have sex. That's not what it's saying. Okay. But they come up with these doctrines because we learn that people can't control themselves. Right. So we come up with these ideas of abstinence and so forth. But we know that if you want to raise your spirituality, hold your seed. That's right. And so when you hold your seed, what happens to an older person when sometimes they lose functionality?
Yes, they do.
Right. They raise that seed and they become more spiritual. Well, we can do that when we're young. Doesn't mean you can't have sex. Just don't release.
That's right.
It's inundated in our literature. All the esoteric.
I have in my library a book, a medieval book. I couldn't believe I found it, and it was all about this. Old book with old engravings on it of how to hold your seed and how important it is, and it was a Christian book.
So you have, but I did want to. I don't want to dwell on, but I want to touch on because we have a totally misunderstanding of homosexuality. Okay, I think the Gnostics had it right in this sense. Okay, some of them, not all of them, but some of the sects had it right. They didn't have a problem. The early Christians, remember, you had this organic movement from Christ to the Nicene Council, about 300 years.
Yeah,
and it was this organic movement, and they didn't have a problem. A lot of them didn't have a problem with homosexuality. But let me make it clear, even in the ancient world, they understood the relationship between man and woman is divine. Why is it divine? Because it creates life.
Right.
You, honestly, I'm not saying you can't go to heaven. I'm just saying you really don't want it. It's a lot easier to go to heaven. Akasha, the ethereal realm, the gatekeepers, remember, they were more than likely heterosexual. They're not letting you in if you're not pure of heart, where you're not overcome by the materialism of sex. Now, let me deal with homosexuality. Listen, my personal libertarian views, and I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. I've asked for guidance on this, and they said, well, listen, if two guys get together and it's a monogamous relationship and they're doing the same thing that a heterosexual is doing, who cares, right? You have your proclivity. It's not divine. Let's make that clear. It's not divine. It's not a divine act. It's sort of like two dogs humping each other. Right? I get it. So if you want to do that, do your thing. Where it's wrong is men dressing up as women, showing their goodies to 3-year-old children in a public parade. That's wrong. The problem with homosexuality is, same thing with heterosexuality, is proclivity, or this over stimulation of sex, where it becomes a material experience. I got to do it again and again. I got to cheat on my wife. I got to have group sex. I got to do all this stuff. That's wrong. That's not divine thinking in that sense. So are you using your organ to show your companion love without an orgasm, because orgasm would be materialism? Or are you holding it in and having sex to show your companionship, whether it's once a week, once a month, once a year, whatever you two agree on, that doesn't matter.
Right.
It's a form of procreation, which is necessary for our evolution as a species, but it's also a form of showing love. Now, some people don't do that. They're attracted to men or whatever they're attracted to, I get it. But if you want to get past the gatekeepers, and that's the way I've been told, if you want to get past the gatekeepers who had this experiences as well, no. And by the way, who would be some of the people? And I've asked, I said, is Martin Luther King a member of the Great Way of Brotherhood? They said, yeah. I said, is Mahatma Gandhi a member of the Great Way of Brotherhood? They said, yeah, he's up here. And I'm sitting here going, well, Albert Pike, yes. Manly P. Hall, yes. All right, were these perfect men? No, but they served humanity during their time. Like George Washington, he was a slave owner, but during his time, that was perfectly normal. But he tried his best to get rid of it. You see, and I've never asked if he is or not. I don't know, but he was a prominent Freemason, so I kind of like him a lot.
It's funny that you're kind of bringing this up, because yesterday I actually took an hour and a half out of my life and I watched this movie, My Son Hunter, which I highly recommend. I would give it 5 out of 5 stars. The acting is absolutely incredible, and the story is absolutely incredible. It's a low budget movie, but I don't care about that. But it's about Hunter Biden's spiritual de-evolution into the material, right? Of drugs and sex and making deals, and it's really funny and sad, and I highly recommend it. But if you want to know what Hank is talking about, watch that movie, because it's worth it.
I like watching certain television programs, not for the most part, contemporary movies and stuff that's just corrupt. It's an attempt by the elementals. Yeah. And the elementaries that are created by elementals and negative disembodied spirit. By the way, we have angelic and demonic. Definitely. We have both, and they both serve God's purpose, which is to test you.
Well, the demons are making movies.
Well, they control people. They by the way, they control our leadership. They control if they're not moral, right? I didn't say what religion. If they're not moral, if their behavior is inappropriate, we know that they're not moral. They're more than likely being controlled by an elemental. By the way, the disembodied spirits control elementals as well, just as you can control them. But people need to be moral. They're attracted to us because we have a soul. They're superior to us in some ways, but if you don't activate your soul to defend yourself in this realm, this playground, they will control you.
All right, so let's address that. You're a poor, unfortunate person who's made a lot of mistakes, and you're in your 30s, and you've got an element attached to you that is causing you grief.
Absolutely.
How do you get rid of this thing?
According to Paracelsus and Helena Blavatsky, Charles Ledbetter, Albert Pike, Morals and Dogma, which is an iconic book in Freemasonry, Manly P. all of them, they all talk about morality. I don't care. So
you're saying that you just make the decision that you're no longer going to lie, cheat, steal, have sex outside of your marriage or whatever your relationship, and that you will shed these things. By
the way, it's more than that. It's actually all your thoughts in your head.
Right.
I used to, when I go into a classroom, I knew I had one particular student. And this one particular student, you always get one, really, really smart. And they always challenge you or something.
Yeah.
And I used to.
I love that.
I love the power of manifestation. So I would literally, I'd be sitting in the parking lot. I would meditate for 5-10 minutes before. And I said, okay, this student and him and I, or her and I, we're going to communicate together. We're going to find a meeting. We're going to balance it out. And we're going to do this. And I would pray and I would meditate and everything else. And all my thoughts. And I get into the classroom and this troubled student was great.
Yep.
And we had a great experience and we connected.
Yeah.
So,
I used to do that when I was directing films. I would pull up to the studio and then I would just sit in the car because I had trouble actors and technicians. And for 10 minutes, because the hardest part of making a movie is getting out of the car. All right. That's the hardest part of your day. Once you open that door, it's just like, pure chaos for 10, 12 hours, right? So I would sit there for 10 minutes and go, okay, I'm going to get along with Tom today. I'm not going to yell at him, even though he's an idiot sometimes, and it would work.
Respond to me, and he's going to respond to me.
Yeah.
We're going to connect. We're going to give and take.
Yeah.
But our leaders aren't doing that. Our people are not doing. They have no moral guidance whatsoever.
That's for sure.
I can compare by the way, we're not looking at perfection in the 1960s. We had our own problems. But by today's standards, I mean, today is literally Sodom and Gomorrah. It's bad. It is out of control. Anyone has a modicum of morality is saying, wait a minute, something's wrong here. And by the way, and I love this, people will say, I'm a good person. Yeah, but what about your private morality? The thoughts you have in your head, your manifestations that you're projecting out into the universe. What are you doing? Who are you? How are you treating your wife, your children, your dog, by the way, I woke up this morning and I usually have 1 or 2 birds right up here on the telephone pole behind me. And this morning, knowing that I was going to have a conversation with you, there was at least 20 of them.
Yeah.
And people go, well, why birds? Well, they're the spirit fire.
They are.
They're the Kundalini. They're the candle they're the salamander. What do you mean? Salamander.
Yeah, they are.
They are reptiles. People don't know that birds are reptiles.
Yes,
and we have I left this here, right here, but we have the double-headed phoenix, right? What is the phoenix? The fiery bird, right? Yeah. It is the messenger of God to the enlightened.
I had a vision a long time ago when I was 33 years old. I had a vision. I was in the middle of a forest in California in the mountains above San Diego, and it was way late, 2 a.m, and I was camping. And I was sitting in front of this ancient oak tree. And as I looked at it, because the moonlight was funny, it was off to the side, I saw the roots of the oak tree turn into silver snakes. And then they rose up and they went around the trunk of the tree out to the branches where they burst into silvery birds and flew away. And I was like, wow, that is like the secret.
That's the sidereal force of the universe. That's why the fire is used in all our ritual. Masonry and Catholicism and most religions, they have the candle. They're calling on the active force of the universe. Yeah. The Holy Spirit, the Father's active force.
The plasma, the ether. And you can control it. You have control over everything. You just have to have discipline. That's the key, is you must have discipline, which is why these rites are important. And because that's what they do. They give you spiritual discipline in that moment of doubt when you have, if I make this decision, which is a wrong decision, I'll get $1 million. If I make the right decision, I end up with nothing. And you have to make the right decision. And that's the problem.
May I suggest, don't have those conversations.
Exactly.
Because when you have those conversations, you're debating good and evil.
You are. And also be careful what movies and TV shows you watch and what books you read, because a lot of it's designed.
Unless there's a moral intent behind it.
Yeah.
Unless there's a good, like I say, moral justice prevails.
That's right.
To do that.
That's right. I have certain movies that I watch that I like, and people say, well, that's a horror movie. Why do you like it? And I said, because it has a moral outcome. The woman is running away from the bad guy and everything, but in the end, there's justice is achieved, and she makes the moral choices that get her out of the situation. And so that's why I'm watching. I'm not watching it for the visceral thrills of the film. I want to see somebody actually do things right. And that's what's missing in today's films. And
Right. They're focused in on wokeism, which is a variety of topics. We don't need to get in. I don't want to get you banned on YouTube. By the way, the reason I'm on Rumble, it's a free speech platform. So
yeah, I know I may be going there.
the things I talk about, I can't talk about here. So on my infinite immortality on Rumble, you have, I mean, hundreds of videos. And I'll go into detail. I'll break it down, all Masonic literature. It's usually
Yeah.
core.
Well, I'd like to have you back and do this again, because I want to get more into the actual nature of these spiritual forces and what their characteristics are, what you have to watch out for. And talking about wokeism, I got to bring this up because I'm a huge J.R.R. Tolkien fan, and wrote a gigantic essay about the alchemical messages within Lord of the Rings, which is a lot of this what we've been talking about. And I have to say, I watched the Amazon version of Lord of the Rings, and it broke my heart. It broke my heart. I couldn't believe how terrible it was. And
I don't do that. I don't watch those things anymore.
I'm not never watching another episode. I watched the first two, and I was like, okay, well, they don't have any, they clearly never read Tolkien or understood what he was actually trying to say. So I just discarded it. It was another disappointment, another Hollywood disappointment.
I like the podcast of Dan Bongino. If you ever get a chance, watch him. He's brilliant. He's an devout Catholic, so I kind of relate to him, Yeah. And he's talking about the moral injustice of all our organizations. He's talking about the disbanding of the FBI because of its moral corruption. No one's going to trust the FBI anymore. No one's going to come up and say, "Oh, I trust you. Here's the information."
Oh my God! If I met an FBI agent, I'd be running. I'm terrified of these guys now. And my uncle was a high-ranking FBI agent, and I thought the FBI was this great organization until recently. But they were created by an executive order by Teddy Roosevelt. So they can be uncreated by an executive order. They know that, and that scares them.
Well, the body itself could be absorbed by other bodies.
Absolutely.
And we can increase their funding. We don't have to, Dan Bongino was quite clear about that. But evil has corrupted through a bastardization, inbreeding of thought process. One of the first steps they did was change the way the Senate was run.
That's right.
Originally, it was basically an appointment by the governors. Whoever won the governor's race, he appointed 2 senators or whatever. And now it's a popular vote. The worst thing you could do. We're a democratic republic. Our founding fathers, who, by the way, most of them were Masons.
Yeah.
So they were aware of the 4 elements and the elementary spirit. So they devised the system set up to protect an American democratic republic. And the Senate was the stoppage of the House of Representatives.
Right.
The first thing to
the wackadoodles. The Senate was to stop all the wackadoodles.
Right, they're crazy.
Yeah, you're crazy. That's a dumb idea, right? We're not going to let that happen.
But the Senate was a social club for many years, and it was, if you won the state, which, by the way, there are more Republican states than there are Democratic states, but that was the first step. Honestly, we need to go back to that, where basically the Senate is appointed by the governor, the Senate representatives, and I think that will stop the House of Representatives and slow things down. We have this quickening going on. They know their time is short, like a parasite, like the spirit world. They know their time is short, and they're just showing themselves. The problem is our education system sucks. Our media is corrupt, and our political leadership are corrupt. And many of our organizations are more worried about their retirement, so they'll just follow along than fight back. There we are.
It's a hairy situation for sure, and I think you are presenting a way out. You really are. You're presenting a way out. And if we go back to rule of law and not rule by statute, because the federal government rules by statute. Statutes are not laws. The Constitution is the law. And once you point that out to the judge, especially in federal court, there's not much he can do about it, because
the worst thing we ever did, it started with little things like getting rid of the 10 Commandments. You got a problem with the 10 Commandments? Are you serious? I mean, these are just general. Honor thy father and mother. That's gone. Just think about all these things. We got rid of that. There's a slow corruption. But we need to go back. And I used to talk to my colleagues, and of course, I would teach business ethics. I was the head of the department, the little college I was a member of. And I said, ethics is based on morality. And then people say, oh, no, it's not. You don't need a religion to be. I'm like, look it up. And they look it up and they go, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Why don't we go back to teaching morality? I'm not saying, i.e., particularly Christian morality, but how about just literally make it like they're doing with wokeism? Literally make everything an ethical, even math equations. Make them literally, let's counter the wokeism and let's teach morality. If we can do that, teach morality ethics on a massive scale in an unjust system, we can turn it around really quick. But people need to get rid of their private thoughts that are bad and negative, that are not, we live in the West. It's a Christian culture, Judeo-Christian, really. It's a Judeo-Christian culture. And we need to get past the idea that, oh, there are a bunch of hypocrites. You're looking for perfection. It doesn't exist.
Doesn't
But
exist.
there's nothing wrong with their writing and nothing wrong with their literature. We just got people, or leadership, who are not following their own doctrine.
And with that, I think that's a great place to end it, because that's exactly the message I'd want to get out here. Thanks so much, Hank.
My pleasure.
Really enjoy having you on, and I want to have you back. I want to get further into the details here and just start doing a real drill down. Hopefully, we won't get censored or anything. Anyway, I'm Jay Weidner. This has been Reality Check, and I really thank you all for watching. I hope you got something out of this, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.